To save all COD charges and pay only $12.98 for records or cassettes or $16.98 for compact disc, plus $3 shipping, use your credit card or send check or money order to Anne Murray, P.O. Box 8250, Atlanta, Georgia. Remember, save COD charges by sending check or money order or use your credit card.
This is CNN.
A political brawl in the Japanese parliament touched off by memories of militarism. A violent mob scene in Cambodia, sparked by old hatred of the murderous Khmer Rouge and the scarred battlefields of Yugoslavia. Will UN peacekeepers be stationed there? Welcome to our viewers around the world. I'm Catherine Crier. Frank Sesno is off today. The United States hopes that peace talks in Washington will go on despite Israel's call for a delay. For the very latest, we go live now to the State Department and CNN's Ralph Begleiter. Ralph?
Catherine, Israel's refusal to accept December 4th as the starting date for the next round of Middle East peace talks has left the United States essentially speechless. State Department spokeswoman Margaret Tutwiler tried to make the best of it by welcoming Israel's acceptance of Washington as a location for the talks, even if the date is unresolved.
We are delighted that the Israeli government has accepted Washington, D.C. as a venue. It is our understanding that all parties have now accepted to hold the next round of bilateral talks in Washington, D.C. Some parties have proposed different dates for negotiations in Washington. Obviously, we want the negotiations to resume as soon as possible. We would be pleased with any time, any date that the parties want to get together.
Lebanon and Jordan have already accepted December 4th to start the talks, so the United States doesn't think it can change the date. And the U.S. is now saying the facilities for negotiations, rooms, phones, security, and so forth, will all be ready and in place beginning on December 4th, even if no one shows up to talk. Remember, the Syrians nor the Palestinians have officially responded to the U.S. invitation yet. This flap over the date for the beginning of the talks reflects the fraying at the edges of the Middle East peace process the United States and Soviet Union are putting together. The U.S. had hoped to have responses from everyone by now. It does not have a response from everyone, and it has a negative response to the date from Israel at this point. Catherine?
Ralph, you talk about whether or not they're even going to attend in Washington. What about the issues such as direct negotiations, how the talks would be conducted? Have those even been addressed yet?
No, they haven't talked about, they haven't addressed that issue yet. The United States is trying to get over one hurdle at a time, and it shows you a little bit of how small the hurdles are. When they haven't even been able to agree on a date, they've now apparently settled on the place. Perhaps the next step will be the date, and then they'll resolve the question of how to conduct the talks, whether, for example, all the Arabs and Israelis will be in the same room at the same time, whether the talks will be held simultaneously on 3 different fronts, whether they will be held at 3 different times in 3 different buildings. There are all kinds of possibilities, and believe it or not, each one of those is an issue to the Arabs and the Israelis.
Procedure first, substance later. Thanks, Ralph Begleiter at the State Department. Why is Israel attaching new strings to the next round of peace talks? For some insight, CNN's Linda Scherzer joins us now on the line from Jerusalem. Linda?
Well, Catherine, the official explanation for why the Israelis have asked for this 5-day delay is simply that they need time to clarify certain issues, to know exactly what it is they're going to Washington to talk about, how long they'll be there, what the agenda will be. Until today, we understood the Israelis were only prepared to discuss procedural issues. Now they say they are prepared to talk substance, so long as the talks are brief and they're moved quickly back to this region. The feeling here, however, is that behind their public declarations, the Israelis are sending a clear message to the United States. It is no secret that Israel was extremely annoyed at the way the U.S. issued the invitations to these talks, that the date and venue was announced before Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir's meeting with President Bush, and so by announcing that they're prepared to hold talks on the 9th instead of the 4th of December, Israel is in fact telling the United States that it cannot impose dates and venues on Israel. that the Jewish state will not be rushed into anything, certainly not the peace process, which will affect its very future. In a way, it's a move to regain some control over when these talks will be conducted, where they'll be held, and what the parties will be talking about. This is Linda Scherzer, CNN, reporting live from Jerusalem.
Linda, before you go, one question. Do you know when a formal response from the Israeli government to the comments out of Washington will be made?
We have asked for that, Catherine. We expect that it will come tomorrow. It is a little after 10 o'clock in the evening, Israeli time. Israeli officials have made their public declarations. We understand that they are absorbing and will probably react to the State Department's statements tomorrow.
Thank you, Linda Scherzer in Jerusalem. He was a member of the detested Khmer Rouge, top aide to the cruelest of Cambodia's leaders, Pol Pot. Khieu Samphan returned home from exile finally, and within hours today was attacked in his own home by an angry mob. Mark Austin reports.
For the 60-year-old guerrilla leader, returning to Phnom Penh was always going to be a dangerous undertaking. The right-hand man of Pol Pot, he's considered the principal architect of the Khmer Rouge's 4-year reign of terror in the late 70s. A brutal revolution when more than 1 million Cambodians were tortured and killed in what became known as the killing fields. There to greet Khieu Samphan, thousands of demonstrators marching through the streets, carrying banners proclaiming Pol Pot killer and Khmer Rouge out of Cambodia. Within hours, 13 years of pent-up anger and hatred had spilled over into a riot of revenge aimed at one man. The security forces tried in vain to protect the Khmer Rouge leader's house, but eventually it was set on fire and ransacked. Inside, eyewitnesses said, Khieu Samphan was kicked and beaten to the ground before he escaped in an armored car to the airport. Many of the demonstrators screamed that they'd lost relatives during the Khmer Rouge rule. It's almost impossible to find a family in Phnom Penh untouched by those tragic years. Khieu Samphan had returned to the Cambodian capital as part of a United Nations-sponsored peace agreement, but the reception only demonstrates the difficulty of including the Khmer Rouge in any new government. It's unlikely that the protests could have taken place without the approval of Prime Minister Hun Sen and the newly acclaimed head of state, Prince Sihanouk. They're clearly trying to forge a popular government, one which isolates the Khmer Rouge. Mark Austin, ITN, Hong Kong.
The United States and Britain are calling for prompt and full compliance by Libya to demands relating to the 1988 bombing of Pan Am Flight 103. Today's joint statement contains no explicit threat, but a U.S. official says all options are open if Libya doesn't cooperate. Demands include the surrender of Libyan suspects, disclosure of all information, including government documents that relate to the bombing, and compensation for families of the victims. The 2 Libyan suspects, both intelligence agents, were indicted for the bombing by the U.S. and Britain 13 days ago. Today's statement also called on Libya to accept responsibility for the bombing and to renounce further involvement in terrorism. Responding to the statement, Libya's foreign minister said Libya will not bow to blackmail. And when we come back, little money, increasing crime, Haitians under embargo.
Good game, good friends. And now that I use Fix-It-Int, I can tell the ref what I really think.
Fix-It-Int and forget it.
Are you nuts? Before I switched to Fix-It-Int, Jones Peanut Crunchies only looked delicious.
Fix-It-Int and forget it. Fix-It-Int is the strongest holding denture adhesive you can get. It even stands up to the hottest liquids.
With my old adhesive, I'd never make a presentation and drink hot coffee at the same time.
For the strongest hold you can get. Fix-It-Int and forget it.
Grandma's got a date. What's a date? That's when you hug someone.
Closeness. You might hesitate if you wore a diaper. So Johnson & Johnson created Serenity Guards, bladder control protection so advanced it holds as much as something 5 times its size and stays dry, locking liquid in.
Grandma, are you gonna hug him? Hug me.
Oh. Give yourself hugs for discovering Serenity from Johnson & Johnson.
You can count on Sears for great Christmas values, like this Kenmore Snackster. Makes hot snacks in minutes. Now at our lowest price ever, just $24.99. You save $8. Friday and Saturday only at Sears.
I crave snacks, but sometimes those calories have to be tabled. No problem. I've got Wrigley's Spearmint Gum. The great taste I love and only 10 little calories. Instead of munching, I enjoy pure chewing satisfaction.
This year, brighten someone's Christmas with gold. A golden tool from the Skill Classic series. Give a golden tool this Yule from Skill.
500,000 men, solid internal forces. Is Saddam Hussein rebuilding his army faster than you think? CNN Special Assignment examines the Iraqi military today at 6 and 10 Eastern tonight.
The UN Security Council voted unanimously within the last hour on a resolution clearing the way for deployment of UN peacekeeping troops to Yugoslavia. The resolution does not authorize the peacekeeping force, but it does bolster UN efforts to keep the warring factions, to get them to comply with the latest ceasefire, the 14th in 5 months of fighting. Only then would unarmed peacekeepers be sent in. Yesterday, Yugoslavia formally asked the UN to dispatch peacekeeping troops. Now, despite the latest ceasefire, the Federal Army and Croatian forces traded fire again today. The fighting has forced an estimated 500,000 people from their homes in Croatia. Stefan Kotsanis looks at the displaced lives of the displaced people.
There's a ski lodge in Serbia not far from the Croatian border. It was built for the workers at the cement factory in nearby Beočin. But for the last 4 months, it's been home to 156 mothers and all their children, and occasionally a few husbands who come back from the front to visit. They are Serbians who have fled their hometowns in Croatia. This woman says she left her home after spending 5 days in her cellar and after shells landed in her backyard and destroyed the barn. She says there were signs long before the fighting broke out that a fight was brewing, and she blames the Croatians.
Early this spring, they started arresting people. They even stopped buses and asked questions. The situation went on till May 2nd when they attacked Borovo Selo.
The war has made hundreds of thousands of Yugoslavs refugees in their own land. Croatian Serbs have fled to Serbia, Croats to the safe areas of Croatia. Others have fled into Hungary, Austria, or even Italy.
What we definitely notice is that as from now 4 months, the movement of the population outside their place of origin has been increasing quite a lot. I mean, we were talking of assistance to 90,000 people in August. Now we already are talking about assistance to nearly 500,000 of people.
Karlovac, Zagreb, Vinkovci, Osijek, Vukovar.
The local Red Cross in the part of Serbia that borders on Croatia says it does not have enough food, housing, and clothing to deal with its caseload. They say they've been lucky that most refugees have found friends or relatives who could put them up.
We were totally unprepared for the situation and the number of people who came, but we were very grateful for the solidarity of ordinary people who opened their homes.
As the war continues, the bitterness on both sides grows, and the question arises, where will the refugees go when it's over? Can they return to their battered streets and side by side repair their pockmarked homes?
This is the inexplicable thing. We all had friends or relatives among the Croats. I still can't understand that we have to stop every contact with them.
This woman is a Croat who fled with her children to the ski lodge. She is married to a Serb. Her Croat parents are somewhere on the other side of the fighting. She hasn't heard from them since last January. She says Croats and Serbs living in the other republic may just have to pack up their bags and go to live with their own kind.
I think that now it's the only solution.
The question is it already too late for Croats and Serbs who were once neighbors to ever live in the same towns again? The worst case scenario would be a mass exchange of population, in which case the upheaval in these people's lives would continue long after the fighting had stopped. Stefan Kotsonis, CNN, Beočin.
The U.S. Coast Guard commander in charge of rescuing thousands of Haitian boat people says the situation is a, quote, major crisis at sea. The Coast Guard has rescued more than 5,000 Haitians over the past month. Many have begun arriving at an emergency camp at the U.S. Naval Base at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. The U.S. government says most of the refugees are fleeing grim economic conditions at home. As CNN's Harris Whitbeck reports, an economic embargo against Haiti is contributing to those conditions.
They gather in small churches to pray for an end to the hardship, for relief from the effects of an economic embargo that has crippled an already badly wounded country. Our children are hungry, says this woman. We can't afford to buy food, and we are living in misery. A cup of rice costs 60 cents. A whole sack goes for $52, about a sixth of the annual income for many Haitians. The normally bustling streets of Port-au-Prince seem practically empty. Few can afford the $20 it takes to buy a gallon of gas. And the scarcity of money is leading to an increase in common crime. People no longer leave their houses at night because they fear being robbed. This pastor, who works in one of the poorest slums of Port-au-Prince, says that a change must take place, that the people can't continue living under the current conditions. But for the poor majority in Haiti, relief does not mean the lifting of the embargo. It means the return of ousted President Jean-Bertrand Aristide. We're dying of hunger, says this man, but he adds that the embargo must remain in place until Aristide returns. But the current government sees things differently and says it is determined not to allow a return to an Aristide government. Prime Minister Jean-Jacques Honorat, who was installed following last September's military coup, says the embargo is unfair and that the Organization of American States acted too quickly when it imposed the sanctions.
The embargo was decided by people who only heard one side of the story.
Honorat says his country is willing to make a sacrifice. As to how far he is willing to go,
that is, we don't know. Time only can tell. But how far we intend to go, that I can tell you. We will never kneel down.
With all sides so apparently inflexible, Haiti has become the playing field for a desperate tug of war, where in the end the only thing that seems to really be at stake is the survival of the Haitian people. Harris Whitbeck, CNN, Port-au-Prince.
And when we come back, parliamentary procedures in Japan, it's a brawl. And in Britain, it's past and present, no longer on the same side.
We see Ed Benjamin preparing for the fight with his challenger, the Stork Chocolate Reason, and the fight is on. The Stork Chocolate Reason puts up a stiff resistance, but Ed Benjamin is a veteran battler who just won't quit. And hey, look at that, sports fans. Eddie's persistence pays. He's a winner. Ed Benjamin has licked the Stork Chocolate Reason, and now he's enjoying his victory. Stork Chocolate Reason, the chocolate challenge.
You grown-ups who think there's no time for a hot breakfast,
Just wait until you have children.
consider Kellogg's Pop-Tarts. Hot and fast from the toaster. All that fruit filling. Tasty.
How about a hug?
Kellogg's Pop-Tarts. Real good, real fast.
We think it's time you tried something new.
New Apple Cinnamon Pop-Tarts.
It's apple.
Big apple flavor with just a touch of cinnamon.
You know what's good. Takes after me.
New Apple Cinnamon Pop-Tarts from Kellogg's.
There's a place in Louisiana that's almost more European than American. They call it New Orleans. Louisiana, we're really cooking. Give us a call.
I was a dedicated beard wearer until my wife gave me the new Remington Microscreen Elite. It's quick, it's close. The Remington Microscreen Elite has 2 ultra-thin screens. So comfortable, shaves as close as a blade or your money back. That's Remington.
You can count on Sears for great Christmas values, like this original DP ergometer, just $199.99, reduced $100. It measures pulse, speed, time, and distance. America's best seller at our lowest price ever, only at Sears.
been 1 year since British Prime Minister John Major replaced Margaret Thatcher, but the months have not mellowed the Iron Lady, nor softened her opposition to some major policies. CNN's Rob Reynolds reports.
Margaret Thatcher!
1 year after her fall from power, Margaret Thatcher is back in form, making life uncomfortable for her successor and former protege, John Major.
I think honourable members may be certain that I shall make my views clear if I'm given the opportunity to do so. It is not my custom to use coded messages.
Mrs. Thatcher's blunt message is a frontal assault on Major's policy on European unification, an issue that helped bring Thatcher down last year.
I believe that the majority of the British people do not want to hand over substantially more powers to the European community.
In 2 weeks, the leaders of the European community will meet in Maastricht, the Netherlands, to discuss treaties cementing European economic and political union. Major says Britain's future lies in a more closely integrated Europe.
We can play a role in developing Europe, or we can turn our backs on the community. But by turning our backs, Mr. Speaker, we would forfeit our right to influence what happens in the community, and that I am not prepared to do.
Major has indicated he'll sign a treaty establishing a common European currency and central bank later this decade, provided Britain can opt out of the arrangement later if it has a change of heart. But opt-out is a cop-out for Thatcher. She sees the proposal as a surrender of British sovereignty and the powers of Parliament.
And it is not only the Queen's head on our pound note, important as that is. Parliament is the monarch, the lords, and the commons. And when you take away the responsibilities of that Parliament for the financial affairs of the nation, and that's what you'll be doing, you take away the right to issue your own currency, not only now, but for always, for always.
In the end, Thatcher voted to support Major, but called for a referendum on Europe after the Maastricht summit. When Major rejected that on constitutional grounds, Thatcher lashed back with the harshest rhetoric yet.
And the government that he proposes to do, and I don't know yet what it does, do so much injury to the Constitution by taking such a big chunk of it away, is not in a position to plead the Constitution. Parliamentary supremacy means the supremacy of the voice of the people. It is the voice of the people. If you deny that to be heard, I think it is arrogant and I think it is wrong.
After that broadside, Thatcher was off to receive an award from the government of Kuwait, leaving Major to endure the taunts of the opposition.
Doesn't the Prime Minister remember saying just a year ago on the steps of Downing Street that the Conservative Party is fully united for the future? Isn't that patently false when in the approach to the vital meeting at Maastricht, the Tory party is in a state of open warfare?
With an election due in spring, the breach over Europe's future has some Tories in a panic over their own. John Major's often been called gray and colorless in comparison to his formidable and flamboyant predecessor. He's spent much of the past year trying to prove that he's not Margaret Thatcher's man. And the most recent rounds of Britain's political prize fight would seem to show he's now anything but. Rob Reynolds, CNN, London.
In Japan, parliamentary debate deteriorated into a pushing, shoving brawl today. The flashpoint just days before the Pearl Harbor anniversary, a bill allowing Japanese troops to take part in United Nations peacekeeping operations. Opponents of the measure surged forward, but failed to halt preliminary approval of the measure. Full parliamentary approval now is expected. No Japanese ground troops have served outside the country since World War II. Well, the scene was much the same in South Korea. Fists flew over a series of bills ramrodded through Parliament by the ruling party. Opposition members also staged a sit-in protest. And in the United States, Congress worked round the clock to clear its agenda in time to adjourn today for the holidays. Fireworks were limited to partisan bickering over a crime bill and an economic growth package. The crime bill passed the House 205 to 203. It faces a presidential veto. House leaders said they may return next month to consider economic proposals. Just ahead, the horrendous discovery made by British authorities when they broke into this rat-infested home. Stay with us.
For those of you who have been reluctant to wear a hearing aid, Miracle Ear has more great news. If you have trouble hearing in noisy situations, the exciting Miracle Ear Clarifier may be your answer. The Clarifier features a special filter that automatically reduces background noise.
In a restaurant situation, it picks up the noises I want to hear, but the other noises are just moved off into the background.
If you or someone you know thinks they may be suffering from hearing loss, call Miracle Ear at this number and receive helpful information.
It really makes a lot of difference in your way of hearing and your way of life.
Call this number. Miracle Ear will send you a booklet on better hearing, plus a coupon for a free hearing test. Call today. Learn about all the good news from Miracle Ear.
A lot of people don't even know you got it, especially the one I got, the design that I got.
Call this number. Find out if Miracle Ear can help you.
See what the world is like when nature takes care of itself. The American Paradise, United States Virgin Islands.
Tonight, drugs that claim to make you smarter might make you poorer first. The controversy over so-called smart drugs. Tonight on Larry King Live, 9 p.m. Eastern on CNN.
The London tabloids are calling him Jungle Boy, but the name fails to convey the horror of what British authorities discovered when they broke into a home in Surrey County and found the 11-year-old boy. Piles of rotting rubbish and dozens of dead or dying animals covered the floors in the house. The boy, whose matted hair was down to his waist, apparently never attended school and was rarely allowed out of the house. Neighbors say the boy's mother kept to herself, and they never saw the need to report the situation to authorities.
It's nothing to do with them what your neighbour does, is it? I mean, I can't say she was ever cruel to him because I didn't know them well enough.
The boy and his mother, who reportedly suffers from depression, have been taken to a community house.
First job is for us, with other professionals, health service, education, is to make a full and proper assessment of the needs not only of the child but of the mother, and make a plan for the future care of that child, education, health, mother's problems, whatever, if there are any, will all have to be seen, because we will have to make some decisions, crucial decisions, about keeping them together as a family unit.
Authorities say they've had to put to sleep several of the animals found in the house. And ahead on CNN World Report, OPEC ministers meet to determine how much oil to produce for a petroleum-hungry world. We'll have a report from one of the leading oil-producing countries.
We're Jerseys, and for 89 years, we've been making the finest sportswear in America. Our clothes aren't high-fashion status symbols. They're just clothes that feel good, fit comfortably, and hold up wash after wash. From T-shirts to sweats to golf shirts, we make colorful quality activewear for the whole family. Jerseys, since 1902, the experience shows.
Where would the action be without cable? In just 1 month, a subscription to cable gives you over 1,200 hours of sports programming you wouldn't be able to see anywhere else. Cable contributes to life.
International Hour continues, followed by Early Prime after this local commercial break. Next on CNN.
We have not lost our lease, and to celebrate, we're having a GE factory-authorized mega sale. It's going on now at Martin's Appliance. You'll beat next year's price increase on all GE major appliances. No payments till February, and free local delivery. Price, selection, and Martin's quality service. 3 reasons to shop the GE factory-authorized mega sale right now at Martin's Appliance, Des Moines Appliance Superstore, Sherwood Forest Shopping Center.
Dodge announces the ultimate guarantee.
A plan that helps protect your new Dodge Caravan from the day you buy to the day you sell. It's your assurance of value when you buy, safety when you drive, security when you need it. A warranty choice no one else offers. Even guaranteed value when you trade. You can't do better than that.
Hurry to Granger Motors before your monster deal disappears.
This is CNN.
Tough economic times in the United States are cutting into Canada's Christmas tree business. Canada traditionally delivers 10 million Christmas trees to the United States each year. But this holiday season, orders are down by 1/4. Some folks feeling a financial pinch are doing without trees. Others are turning to plastic pines. One Canadian grower advises Americans to sacrifice a case of beer so they can afford to drink in the beauty of a holiday tree. Now for a financial update, let's check in with Jan Hopkins at the New York Stock Exchange. Jan.
Thanks, Catherine. Investors are selling today on Wall Street again. Stocks taking a cue from weak bond market and overseas stock markets. Also a sell-off in Dow stock. IBM is pressuring the market. Right now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is near its low for the day, down about 12 points at 2904. Volume is moderate, 145 million shares traded so far. Declining issues are leading advancing issues by an 8 to 7 margin. On the broader and secondary markets, all four key indexes are losing ground. Market leader IBM, today among the most active issues here at the New York Stock Exchange. It's down $3 at 94 7/8. That's after gaining 2 3/4 yesterday. Several analysts downgrading and lowering earnings estimates in the wake of Big Blue's restructuring announcement. Some mixed news on the U.S. economy. Orders for durable goods or big-ticket items picked up 3% in October. But most of that increase was because of strong demand for defense goods. Separately, Americans earned a little bit more but spent less last month. That's not good for the economy. It's good for savings. It's not good for the economy because consumer spending fuels growth. Finally, 413,000 Americans filed for unemployment insurance during the week ending November 16th. That's about 80,000 fewer than the week before. Bond prices fell on those mixed reports. The Treasury's 30-year bond down 9/32, and the yield up to 7.96%. Trading ended early in New York ahead of the Thanksgiving holiday. In Vienna today, OPEC ministers agreed to maintain their current production ceiling through the first quarter of next year. Oil prices rose in New York trading. Traders say that the gains are a technical move following recent declines. A barrel of light sweet crude up 35 cents today to sell at $21.37 a barrel. We'll have another report in 1 hour with Wall Street's closing numbers. Right now, a final check of the Dow before we go shows the blue chips down 10 3/4 points. I'm Jan Hopkins, reporting live from the New York Stock Exchange.
Thanks, Jan. And still ahead, a plan to let women spend quality time with their children, even though mom is an inmate.
This stock market update is brought to you by Acura Automobiles. Experience precision-crafted performance.
At Acura, we believe that a luxury sedan should appeal to a driver's appreciation of soft leather, fine wood, and beautiful stretches of asphalt. The Acura Legend sedan.
It feels as refreshing as it looks. The new shower massage from Teledyne Waterpick.
Do yourself proud, make you look beautiful, do it for yourself with Minwax and Wood.
Get beautiful color with Minwax Wood Finish and lasting protection with Minwax Polyurethane.
So do yourself proud with Minwax and Wood.
When you're all stuffed up and use an ordinary nasal spray, it drips into your tissue where it can't help you breathe. But not Sinex Ultrafine Mist. Its medicine stays where you need it, so you can breathe the way you want to. We don't drip down, we clear up.
Gentlemen, in preparing our...
Are you finding it harder and harder to get home in time to watch the evening news? Then you should know about the network that gives you news when you need it. A network made for people on the go. And because it's there all the time,
Mom, do you think this is such a good idea?
it lets you take your time.
And that's the news. Good night.
CNN Headline News. The latest news, business, and sports around the clock.
And now to Lou Waters with a preview of what's coming up on Early Prime. Lou?
Right, Catherine. Many folks are concerned that modern medicine will force them to live longer than they should. We'll look at how some of those folks are trying to make sure that doesn't happen. New allegations that the biosphere in the Arizona desert is not exactly all it's cracked up to be. More about that. And we'll have the story of this would-be butterball who won't be spending Thanksgiving in the oven or on the table. Early Prime in about 25 minutes or so. Join us. Now back to Catherine.
Thanks, Lou. The former chairman of the Union Carbide Corporation was ordered today to appear in a court in India over the Bhopal poison gas disaster. The order issued to Warren Anderson came as the criminal trial against the company resumed. The gas disaster in December 1984 killed 3,700 people and injured 200,000. Last month, India's Supreme Court threw out an agreement in which charges against the firm and its officers were dropped. Anderson was directed to appear in court in February. The leader of the Soviet Ukraine narrowly escaped an assassination attempt today. According to the Ukraine Information Service, Leonid Kravchuk made an unexpected stop at a local shop in the Ukrainian city of Kharkov when someone came at him with a knife. The Ukrainian parliament chairman escaped without harm, but his bodyguard was wounded trying to protect him. A plan by Britain's Labour Party would allow mothers in prison to visit their children at home. While family trips to prisons aren't unusual, proponents of the measure say the visits home help children adjust to the loss of their mothers. More from Anya Sitaram.
9 o'clock in the morning at Style Prison, and a father brings his children for a visit to their mother. It's part of a new scheme to let inmates spend more time with their children. Style is one of only 2 women's jails in Britain where children can visit all day. In theory, mothers can see their children 5 days a week. In practice, the lucky ones manage to meet up once a fortnight. A house in the prison grounds has been set aside for the visits. With an array of toys, it's designed to be a substitute home. This is the room where inmates receive visits from relatives and friends. Until the new scheme started, it was the only place where mothers could see their children. Visits were restricted to an hour and a half, and both mothers and children found the surroundings impersonal. For Jill Kershaw, who faces life behind bars until 1995, the scheme has helped to ease the pain of separation.
I know what they're doing now. They know me. They just lost all contact. They didn't know who I was, and now they do. I'm seeing them quite a lot now, and a lot better.
The scheme in itself, I think, was first and foremost for the children, in that the children may well be suffering quite acutely through the separation from their mothers. And by reuniting them, what we felt was important was that the children felt the mother hasn't deserted them, does still care about them. Because so often, children can't understand imprisonment and why mummy isn't there.
It's no substitute for home, though, is it?
No, it isn't, but we're in a position where at least we're trying to do the best we can and to be as near as possible within the prison setting.
Out of Style's 200 inmates, nearly half have children under 16. In the month that the scheme's been running, 15 have been able to use it. While Jill can be mum for the day, other inmates' families live too far away. Carol hasn't seen her 5 children for 4 months.
Well, it hurts a bit, you know, but it's just, well, there's nothing I can do about it at the moment, so I can try and sort these visits out. You know, being away from him, but I just got to try and get it sorted.
Alison Trundle served a year out of a 3-year sentence for fraud before being released on appeal this summer. She says long absences from her daughter, who's now 6, were extremely damaging.
We're told to expect rejection, so you can't immediately say to the child, you must do this and you must do that, because they will turn around and say, go away again, Mummy.
Susanna Jackson, who worked for the royal dress designer Linka Chirac, had her 18-month prison sentence for theft suspended. She spent a night in jail away from her baby.
The child has not committed a crime. I think it's quite ludicrous, really. It's an archaic system. Your baby is wrenched away from you. You don't know where they're going to go. If you haven't got guardians in this country, it goes into care without you having any say in it whatsoever.
So bye-bye.
The scheme at Style has been welcomed by prisoners and prison groups, but reformers backed by Labour say more should be done for mothers in all Britain's jails. Jill Kershaw will see her children again in a fortnight, though she knows 14 days apart will not be easy. Anya Sitharam, ITN, Cheshire.
And ahead on CNN World Report, is the Mideast peace process still on track? We'll talk with an Israeli journalist about Israel's request to delay the next round of talks.
This morning, everything seemed fine. But as the day wore on, he felt feverish, weak. And though every muscle in his body ached, he kept going. Now, with the job done, he has a raw, sore throat, congestion, and a hacking cough. Steve McKee knows it's a flu, and he's got to get home to relief. Theraflu relief. Theraflu is serious flu medicine doctors recommend. Strong, hot liquid relief to ease flu symptoms fast. Theraflu. Your flu misery stops here.
America's at work with Vanderbilt. America's at work with Vanderbilt.
I was afraid of the computer, but with Quicken, it's easy to use.
I never worry about money, now that I use Quicken.
Yes, Quicken, the world's #1 selling financial software and the fastest, easiest way to organize your home and small business finances. Quicken pays bills, balances checkbooks, cuts tax time, tracks investments. And it's simple. If you can use a checkbook, you can use Quicken because your screen looks exactly like your checkbook. Just type in the payee, the amount, and Quicken does the rest. Every transaction is automatically categorized. A keystroke gives you detailed reports like income and expenses, showing where your money goes, monthly budgets, and more.
Quicken just reconciled my whole bank statement in 2 minutes.
So, if you have an IBM or compatible PC with DOS or Windows or a Mac, here's an incredible offer. Quicken's price is $69.95. But call this number and Quicken is yours to try for 30 days for just $8. If not satisfied, mail back this card and Quicken is yours to keep. We won't charge you the balance. Call now.
Call 1-800-251-4200.
Welcome to CNN World Report, where we bring you news as reported by broadcasters around the globe from their perspective. Now, as we reported earlier, the United States says it will be ready to host the next round of Mideast peace talks on December 4th, despite Israel's refusal so far to accept the date. The Israeli government says it needs more time to prepare and wants the talks to start December 9th. Joining us now to discuss this latest development in the peace process is Oded Ben-Ami of the Israel Broadcasting Authority. Oded, I understand you were at the debriefing of President Bush's spokeswoman, Margaret Tutwiler, with the State Department. What's the flap over the issuing of this invitation?
Well, this was the administration's idea to ask the parties to come over to Washington, D.C. on December the 4th. Israel is surprised by not being consulted beforehand by the administration and is willing very much to go on with these negotiations, of course, but this was the administration promise not to impose anything on the sides. So Israel came out, the cabinet came out today with the idea to postpone this date to the 9th. And after 43 years that Israel asked the Arab sides to come over to negotiate and to talk peace, 5 days are not very much, I think.
Well, now, is this a legitimate request for 5 days or an attempt to exert influence before the talks begin to show that they are not being suppressed or succumbing to some form of pressure?
Well, Israel was in Madrid, of course, and this was the beginning of the process. I don't see any reason to believe that Israel would like to gain something but to gain its dignity, but not being pressed to anything by the administration. After all, this is the peace in the Middle East, and between Israel and the Arab countries and the Palestinians, and not between Israel and the United States. We have peace with the United States. Actually, we are the United States is the best ally of Israel, and we think that it will be much more convenient for all sides in the Middle East to agree on the dates and all other issues, on other details of this procedure between themselves. Right after Madrid, Israel asked its Arab neighbors to agree on the date and on the venue of the next step of this negotiation, but there was no reply at all. This is how the administration came out with this December 4th, by the way, by surprising the Israeli Prime Minister, who was here in Washington after his discussion with the Secretary of State and before his meeting with the President in the White House. All of a sudden he waked up and turned on its TV set and realized that the invitation already issued.
Oded, let me ask you about some other concerns, procedural concerns, and that is literally the form the talks will take. What about the Israeli government's response to negotiations being direct or bilateral? How might those talks formulate? Well,
the Israelis would like very much to negotiate with the Syrians, and then with the Jordanian-Palestinian delegation, and then with the Lebanese, not with all of them together, but one after another. Bear in mind that Israel is 50% of any of these talks. So it will be much easier for the Israelis not to have all these Arab delegations together here in town, because the pressure on Israel will be much heavier.
What about the political circumstances within Israel itself? There seems to be a continuing strong division about attending the talks or not. Might this threaten the ongoing talks themselves?
Not at all. I mean, there is no question that Israel is going on with the negotiations, with the peace process. But bear in mind the fact that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. The only democracy where every issue is a matter of discussion, a political discussion. While once the administration would like to ask the Syrians for their position, they are picking the phone and they are calling Hafez Assad. And Assad is Syria. Whenever they are calling Lebanon, again, Assad is their response. But in Israel, the democracy, everything is a political procedure. This is why the cabinet has its discussion today. There was an opposition to the prime minister idea, but at the end, at the vote, of course, the answer was yes, we are coming to Washington. We would like to go on with this negotiation.
All right, Oded Ben-Ami, thank you very much for joining us on the International Hour. And when CNN World Report continues, a look at some of the people who monitor human rights in El Salvador. But first, let's check tomorrow's weather forecast for selected cities around the globe.
Imagine being born with the ability to meet any challenge expertly. That's the wonder of the Maxim XI from Minolta. With the experience of professionals programmed right in, it responds to any change of speed, or light, or distance automatically. For ultimate performance, the multi-talented Maxim XI, born experienced.
Only from the mind of Minolta.
Listen to this. Depend products with Absorblock Plus are truly making a difference. Dear June, when the local daycare asked for help, I thought, I can do this. But June, it wouldn't have been possible without Depend. And double-layered Absorblock Plus makes this our best protection yet. The top layer absorbs, the quilted layer locks liquid away. I knew I could give something to those kids, but I couldn't believe how much they gave me. Get back into life.
Grandma's got a date. What's a date? That's when you hug someone.
Closeness. You might hesitate if you wore a diaper. So Johnson & Johnson created Serenity Guards, bladder-controlled protection so advanced it holds as much as something 5 times its size and stays dry, locking liquid in.
Grandma, are you gonna hug him? Hug me.
Oh. Give yourself hugs for discovering Serenity from Johnson & Johnson.
Leftist rebels in El Salvador threatened to call off a 10-day truce if the army doesn't stop military sweeps against their forces. The rebel statement was issued yesterday, the second day of peace talks with the government. UN Television has more on the civil war and the work of a UN observer team in El Salvador.
If this children's band plays military-style music, it's hardly surprising. Their home is El Salvador. For the past 12 years, the country's been torn by civil war. On one side, a coalition of guerrilla groups known as the FMLN. On the other, the army of El Salvador. Tens of thousands have been killed. Human rights violations were widespread. 1 million civilians fled their homes. In July 1990, the two sides reached an agreement on human rights, and the UN Security Council created ONUSAL, the UN observer mission in El Salvador.
By establishing this mission, perhaps the level of conflict would be reduced and an atmosphere would be created that, in fact, would give an impulse to the negotiations that were continuing.
Susan Su from Canada and Reinhard Junghecki from Germany are part of the 120-strong UN human rights staff. Their work includes investigating reports of torture. On this day, they visit El Salvador's largest prison. This young inmate claims he'd been interrogated and tortured before coming to the jail. ONUSAL has followed up hundreds of claims of ill-treatment and brutality in both political and non-political cases. The young man's story is typical. He says he was beaten with a rifle. The team's next assignment is to check a report of armed activity in a nearby community. The UN team arrives at the village 50 kilometers from the capital. It's able to verify that on this occasion, it's the army that's present. Life remains precarious. UN-sponsored talks continue with the aim of bringing about a ceasefire as a step towards a long-term settlement. The UN maintains close contacts with civilians, military and civil authorities, and the FMLN. It's one reason for a recent decline in violence. The best hope for a return of law and justice is an end to the fighting and abuses of human rights. The UN presence is a hopeful sign that the sound of war could be becoming a thing of the past in El Salvador. For UN Television, this is Steve Whitehouse for CNN World Report.
OPEC oil ministers agreed Wednesday to keep production ceilings at the current level through the first quarter of next year. Industry analysts say the ceiling of about 24 million barrels of oil a day is near the cartel's capacity. The oil minister of the United Arab Emirates was one of the key players supporting the agreement. United Arab Emirates TV reports.
UAE Petroleum and Mineral Resources Minister Yusuf bin Omer bin Yusuf leaves Abu Dhabi earlier this week to attend the OPEC ministerial meeting in Vienna. His prediction is that oil prices this winter should stay more or less the same. The United Arab Emirates is now one of the world's major oil producers. It has an installed production capacity of getting on for 3 million barrels a day, and although it's not producing that much, it's still a key player in the oil market. The largest oil producer among the 7 Emirates, Abu Dhabi also has around 200 billion barrels of reserves, enough to go on producing at the current rate for well over a century, long after most other countries have exhausted their reserves. With such a high level of production and reserves, it's not surprising that the UAE's attitude is something to which other delegations pay attention at OPEC meetings. This week's meeting will be no different. Minister Yusuf bin Omer is carrying a few messages for his OPEC colleagues. One is that the group has 2 choices in front of it: to increase production or to maintain present levels. He believes it's likely to stay at the same level, since most members are producing near to full capacity. He also expects there to be an increase in world demand. This, the UAE thinks, should be achieved by taking up to 800,000 barrels a day out of world stockpiles. Here in Abu Dhabi, the UAE's capital, keeping oil prices at a steady and reasonable level has long been a key part of government policy. Only thus, government believes, can the world get its supplies of oil at a price it can afford, while the exporting countries can sell their oil at a reasonable price and be able to plan on a steady source of income. The United Arab Emirates has got other things on its mind besides OPEC this week. Next week it celebrates its 20th anniversary, and the decorations are going up in preparation. But for the UAE, oil will always be important. In Vienna, Minister Yusuf bin Omer and his colleagues will be striving to ensure that everyone's interests, those of producers as well as consumers, are properly taken into account. This is Peter Hellier of United Arab Emirates Television from Abu Dhabi for the CNN World Report.
Hafez al-Assad came to power in Syria as the result of a 1970 coup. A year later, he became the country's president, a position he holds today. State-run Syrian TV provides this report on the rallies held today in support of President Assad, who is expected to be elected to a fourth term next month.
People throughout Syria will head for the polls on the 2nd of December to cast their votes on the re-election of President Hafez al-Assad for a fourth term as head of state. As soon as the People's Assembly in Syria approved President Assad's nomination for a new term, the various populist circles expressed their backing and support to the policies pursued by President Assad for the past 21 years. Damascus and the rest of towns and cities throughout Syria are witnessing wide-scale popular marches attended by citizens of all walks of life to express their commitment to the leadership of President Assad. The people praised the achievements realized within the country and on the Arab and political levels based on the principles of international legitimacy and UN resolutions. The pictures you see now come to you from Hama, where masses went out to the streets to express their jubilation and their support for President Assad. This report was prepared by Syrian TV for the CNN World Report.
And that's all for the CNN World Report and the International Hour. I'm Catherine Crier at CNN Center in Atlanta. Now let's get a look at what's coming up on Early Prime with Lou Waters. Lou?
Let's do, Catherine. Coming up for our U.S. viewers, Crisis at Sea. That's what the Coast Guard calls it as it undertakes its largest ever seagoing operation in the Caribbean, a rescue drama with no happy ending. Home for Thanksgiving, but probably back before Christmas, angry House Democrats accept President Bush's dare on tax cuts. And they fire back with a plan of their own on crime. And that Trading Places team is together again. We'll look at Jamie Lee Curtis and Dan Aykroyd in My Girl, a comedy and tragedy about everyday life. Early Prime is next here on CNN. Join us.
Coming up, Early Prime, followed by Showbiz Today, after a word from your local cable system, here on CNN.
Charlie Deegan's life is almost perfect.
This is going to be a great weekend.
He has the perfect career,
You'll be governor in 5 years.
the perfect secretary, and a perfectly dreadful wife.
Why are you so ungrateful?
Now, if only Charlie had the perfect alibi,
Help me and I'll do anything you ask.
he could get away with the perfect murder. Brian Brown, Veronica Cartwright, Dead in the Water, a USA world premiere movie, Wednesday, December 4th at 9. From the mind of Stephen King.
Good morning, boys and girls.
There's something wrong.
God, this is bad. Extreme safety hazard.
Gravely wrong.
Tracking rats through walls, concrete.
Down under the mill.
I'm going to see you down in the basement.
Where terror lurks.
You're not thinking about going down in there.
At every turn, Stephen King's Graveyard Shift.
When's the last time you've been to a graveyard?
Beyond man's world lies nature's untamed wilderness. From the frozen glaciers of the high Arctic to the forbidding depths of Earth's vast oceans. Tales of survival and preservation among the creatures of the wild. Uncover the mysteries of Mother Earth and witness the spectacle of life among those who inhabit the kingdom of the wild. Thursday on A&E.
I never saw anybody light up a bar like Jack.
You can say that again.
He had a million jokes.
2 million.
Oh, a riot.
Oh, yeah.
One of a kind.
No kidding.
I swear, if I thought he couldn't drive, I'd have said something. You know? I mean, how could you spoil his fun?
Right. Take the keys, call a cab, take a stand. Friends don't let friends drive drunk.